finale of Supernatural was bad. There, I said it. Now I know the finale was pretty divisive and there's a lot of people who really loved it, and that's absolutely okay. I do understand most of the viewpoints that have been made to defend the finale. First though, I want to give a brief history of me and the show. I started watching Supernatural back in February 2019 when a friend recommended it to me. Like so many other people who have fallen in love with the show, once I started watching, I just couldn't stop. I absolutely loved it, and luckily I started watching at the perfect time really, because I was able to watch the final season live with everyone else every week, which is an experience I will always cherish, regardless of my opinions towards the finale. Also, this is my first proper video essay, so if my mic sounds pretty bad, which I'm pretty sure it is, or if I'm getting things wrong with the whole process, then just forgive me because this is my first time. But yeah, anyway. When season 15 episode 19 was released, I was on holiday, and while I thought of waiting till I got home to watch it, along with the finale, I decided to just jump straight into it. Sadly, I was a little underwhelmed going into it because I saw a minor spoiler on Rob Benedict's Instagram, with him posing with Jared, Jensen, and Alex saying, "That's it for me, what a ride. Thank you again to this amazing cast, crew, and group of writers past and present, and to the best fans in the world, my life is forever changed." Regardless of that though, I still really enjoyed the episode. It felt rushed, but I was still really satisfied with it, and I was pumped to see where the final episode would take things. In the week leading up to the final episode, I deleted all social media and stayed away from anything that could possibly provide spoilers for the finale. I was so damn excited. I was just as excited about the finale of Supernatural as I was about Avengers Endgame the year prior, which I'll also be doing a video on soon. So when I finally got home from holiday, I jumped straight on the CW website and watched the finale. Guess what? I absolutely loved it. I couldn't have asked for a better finale. I cried my eyes out, and I had never felt that level of heartache towards any piece of media ever, besides maybe Schindler's List and Life is Beautiful. But as the final scene played, I sat back with incredible satisfaction. I was so sad, but so happy at the same time. However, when I started reading the reviews, I was taken aback by the negativity towards the finale. I genuinely didn't understand and took the stance of, oh, these people just don't understand the show they're watching, and they just didn't get it. Yeah, I was one of those people. I read into a few reasons of why people didn't like the finale, and I sort of understood their stance, but I still remained firm with my opinion. However, over the last few months, my opinion has begun to change. It's now June 2021 as I'm writing this, and I can firmly say that the finale of Supernatural is...
It's awful, horrible, it's hopeless.
Not only have I now changed my opinion on season 15 episode 19, but I now consider it to be a good but not that great penultimate episode. I do genuinely believe that season 15 episode 20 destroyed the progress of 15 seasons worth of character development and story for a simple and misguided finale. In this video I'll be breaking down why that is, and an ending of my own that would hopefully satisfy all fans. Here's how to flush 15 years and 15 seasons of television down the drain. A really great video by Media Buzzkill called The Fiction of Free Will, a Supernatural video essay, breaks down the final episode along with the final season exceptionally well, and I'll link that video in the description because they go really in depth with the concept of meta and how it fits into the show's narrative, and man, I keep rewatching it because it's brilliant and an almost perfect summary of my feelings towards the finale. The thematic inconsistencies present in the finale are quite astounding, to be frank, because the penultimate episode was the perfect way to set up the final episode, simply with the thematic question of, what do Sam and Dean want once the story is over? What do they really want out of life now that they've finally escaped the hamster wheel? By the end of season 15, episode 19, there are a few thematic through lines that are present that should have been followed through on in the finale in order to make a satisfying conclusion to the story. Firstly, the concept of freedom for the Winchesters and what that means for both of them as individuals. I'll talk more about this during the character section of the video, as I've got a lot to say about it and I want to talk about other things first. Secondly, family don't end in blood. This is also affirmed by the amazing montage at the end of episode 19 that pretty much features everyone from the entire show. Like, it's probably my favourite part of that episode, if I'm being honest. And thirdly, the meta-narrative. Also, thematically, it's clear from the season 14 finale that the final season was going to be focusing on the brilliant meta-narrative that the show had already been toying with for over a decade, ever since Chuck was originally introduced. In my opinion, this was the only direction for the show to go during its final season, as they would have been able to tie up all the loose ends the show had whilst making the season feel grand and conclusive. By doing this, it makes the entire show feel much tighter as a result. Why? Because in retrospect, it's made clear where the show is heading, and it also bolsters the concept of the meta-narrative, which then only really allows for one type of ending that would feel satisfying. That is, Sam and Dean defeating Chuck and gaining their freedom from the story. Thematically, this is pure genius, and it seemed like we were going to get that ending after all. Sadly, in the finale, everything that had been set up beforehand was utterly destroyed in one single episode. Instead of leaning into the thematic question of what do Sam and Dean want now that they're out of the story, the finale goes the opposite route and has them continue hunting the exact same thing they've been doing all their lives. It also strays away from the thematic question by doing exactly what shouldn't have happened. Thematically, the finale stated that even though Sam and Dean had defeated Chuck and overcome his story, they still ended up meeting the exact same fates that they had previously wanted or desired. However, that's another thing entirely, and I'll go into that a little later. Again though, the finale states that no matter what conflict you may overcome, no matter how hard you push to gain the freedom you never thought you could have, you will never achieve it because you're destined to the fate you previously desired/thought you deserved at the start of the story. This is genuinely the worst possible ending, as it directly conflicts with the concept of the meta-narrative that they have been building throughout the entire final season. A common defense of that many people have given for the finale is that the show began with the two brothers, so therefore the fact that it ended with the two brothers is narratively and thematically perfect. In some ways that is true, and I'll get into why that is later, but the way that it was executed in the finale and how that concept was used was frankly terrible. The show did start with the two brothers, alone on the road hunting the evil supernatural beings of the world. In the beginning, the themes were pretty clear. Family and love will triumph over any evil, and nothing is stronger than family. Hence the phrase, family don't end in blood. These themes were presented narratively through the brothers' relationship and how far they would go for one another to protect each other, even sacrificing themselves on multiple occasions. However, this isn't how the show should have ended. Yes, those themes are still relevant and should have remained consistent even until the final episode, but to say that it's perfect for the brothers to start the show alone and end the show alone with the exact same mindset and thematic outlook as the beginning is ridiculous. Thematically, to have the finale only center around the brothers is a good idea, but the thematic choices along with the character fates was incredibly contradictory and awful to everything that had been set up before. But again, I'm going to delve into this aspect a little bit later. For the writers to revert the narrative of the final season back to the first season in the final episode is monumentally wrong and misguided. As a result of this, the final episode feels like a strange nostalgia trip until you realize that it is literally an episode that belongs right in the middle of season 1. If Supernatural was only ever a 1 or maybe even 2 season show, then this finale would have been practically perfect. But it's not. It's a 15-year-long show with characters that undergo incredibly difficult character struggles that allow them to change for the better. So for the ending to chuck them right back to where they started is frankly stupid and kind of insulting. Before I dissect the characters of Sam and Dean and their role in the finale, I'm going to lay out a brief thought process that I'm going to use when analysing them. You may have heard this in other formats, but if you haven't, then I'll reiterate it here. Most characters must have two things in order for a story to be strong, compelling, and satisfying. Those two things are wants and needs. When a character wants something, that's what drives their motivation throughout the story and what guides their decisions. It also affects how they relate and interact with other characters. A need is the thing the character must face and come to terms with in order to complete their character arc and satisfy the requirements of the story. By learning that what they want is either not achievable or goes against what's truly important to them inside, they must satisfy that need for the benefit of themselves and the people around them. This makes for a satisfying and logical ending to the story, as the character is no longer driven by something they want, but is driven by their need, depending on what that is. Now, let's go back to Supernatural, shall we? In the beginning of the show, Sam and Dean started off wanting separate things since they were individuals who had their own goals, aspirations, and motivations. Sam wanted to live a normal life, go to college, meet a girl, get a job in law, and hopefully start a family of his own. This changed, however, at the end of the pilot to Sam wanting revenge against the demon that killed Jess. Dean wanted Sam back in the life of hunting with him, as he didn't want to go off and try and find their dad alone. Dean also wanted to keep hunting, as he felt like it was all he was good for and his only purpose in life. Also, it's made quite clear during the first season, well, the first few seasons actually, that Dean has incredibly low self-worth, as pointed out in Castiel's confession scene during Season 15, Episode 18. Dean thinks of himself as destructive, angry, broken, Daddy's blunt instrument. As a result of this, he's made it clear that he wants to die. How does he want this to happen? Blaze of glory, going out on a hunt, dying bloody, the way he's always thought he deserved. And due to this, his low self-worth, he has accepted that and come to terms with that fate. Hence his macho, manly facade that he puts on in front of people. That is what he wants at the beginning of the show. Even though he's died over and over again in gruesome ways, his permanent death was supposedly destined to be going out on a regular hunt, blaze of glory, saving people, hunting things, the family business. At least that's what he thought he deserved. However, by the end of the series, he's gained enough self-worth to realize that's not what he wants anymore.
Remember when you asked if we could stop it? All the evil in the world.
Yeah.
If we could really change things. Well, maybe with Jack we can.
Maybe you're right. But then what will we do?
Yeah. This. A whole lot of this. But on a beach somewhere, you know? You imagine? You, me, Cass, toes in the sand, couple of them little umbrella drinks, matching Hawaiian shirts, obviously, some hula girls.
You talking about retiring? You?
If I knew the world was safe, hell yeah. You know why? Because we freaking earned it, man.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Of Dean Winchester, the ultimate killer.
See, that's not who I am. That's not who we are.
You and me, going wherever the story takes us. Just us.
Finally free.
This is a really good penultimate stepping stone in terms of Dean's character arc and how it wraps everything up, because he has finally gained a proper sense of self-worth, not just by defeating Chuck, but by realizing that who he truly is and who he really wants to be isn't dictated by the story that Chuck had written. Media Buzzkill mentions it in their video, but something the final season really dropped the ball on was the parallel between John and Chuck, both abusive and neglectful fathers who tried to control their children's lives. For Dean to finally overthrow Chuck and gain his freedom, thematically he could have also technically gained his freedom from the path his father set him on ever since he was a young kid. But since the season didn't lean into that parallel, this wasn't officially a thing that was going on. However, I still like to think of it that way. Back to the point though. As a result of Dean gaining his freedom from Chuck and finally claiming his own autonomy, he was now able to complete his character arc as he has put aside his wants that he had at the beginning of the show dying young on a hunt and always having to protect Sam no matter what the personal toll it takes on him, and finally fulfilled his need to achieve a status of self-worth and self-actualization in order to benefit himself and the people around him. Another point to affirm this is the fact that this couldn't have happened without the meta-story being involved. In my opinion, this makes it all feel like a very logical, consistent, and satisfying story for Dean. The reason why I mention this as the perfect penultimate stepping stone for Dean's character arc is the question that was raised at the end of Season 15, Episode 19 still hadn't been answered yet. What does Sam and Dean want now that the story is over and they're free? I also know what you're going to say, but isn't this all about wants and needs? If they're free from the story, then shouldn't they learn something instead of just getting what they want? You may have a point, however, due to the fact that the show has surrounded itself with the concept of meta-narratives, then this is where the wants and needs don't necessarily apply. The reason is that the finale should have followed through on what Sam and Dean needed, which was, by the time the finale started, to figure out a life that was beyond the confines of the story. I'm going to focus on Dean first, because that's the main thing I have an issue with in the finale, but I will talk about Sam afterwards. By the time the finale started, Dean had finally fulfilled what he needed, which was a stable life that was beyond the confines of the story. It wasn't dictated by some grand plan anymore, and he finally had the freedom he deserved. Yes, he wanted this, but he also needed to realize that in order for him to truly break the cycle and get off the hamster wheel, he needed to achieve a proper sense of self-actualization. If he wasn't able to do this, then he truly would have always felt like he didn't belong, even if he had gotten what he wanted, getting freedom from the story. The reason why is that after learning everything he had about Chuck, his manipulations, how Chuck had been controlling them their entire lives, for him to defeat Chuck but remain in the status quo of what he's always known, it would naturally cause him to feel unsatisfied with life, and therefore make us feel unsatisfied at the way the series ends. Oh wait, never mind. Yes, I know that his identity is tied to being a hunter. I'm all for that, because yeah, even though Chuck had been controlling them their entire lives, Dean still loved hunting, even towards the end. But for Dean to not even consider any kind of life outside of the life is strange, because it seemed like that was the only direction for his story to take. But no, he stays with the life and decides to continue hunting and serving the role that he had been placed in from the time he was born, saving people, hunting things, the family business. The role he had been forced into his whole life, destined for nothing more. So back to the events of the finale. Dean has continued hunting, and he continues to live alone with Sam in the bunker. Yes, the pie scene was perfect. Well, not perfect. Sam bringing up Cass and Dean barely reacting and just sort of hand-waving it was a big yikes. But this video isn't about Dean and Cass's relationship. P.S. I do support and like Destiel, but I'm not going to delve into that in this video, as people like Media Buzzkill have already done that really well in their own separate videos, which I'll link in the description. When Dean and Sam go on that final hunt and Dean gets impaled on the rusty piece of rebar, it was random, out of nowhere, and confusing. Some say that this was perfect because they weren't being dictated by the story anymore, and accidents can happen to anyone for any reason. That's just part of being human. Right, okay, well, yes, that may be true, but they aren't invincible now. My god, does that spit in the face of everything the characters had fought for. To say that even after defeating Chuck, even after escaping the story that had been written for them, after 15 years of defying their destinies, a core theme of the show from the beginning of Season 1, to say that Dean just ends up dying on a random hunt, alone with his only brother by his side, and no one else from the family that he and Sam had built over the years, and that despite his current needs, he is still ultimately rendered to be the self-destructive, suicidal idealist. Daddy's blunt instrument that he was at the beginning of the show is incredibly disrespectful, and in some cases quite dangerous to the viewers of the show who have suffered from mental health issues. Why? Because the finale, along with Dean's death, states unintentionally that you will never break out of your cycle, you will never escape your original fate, You will never achieve freedom, you will never achieve happiness in life, and possibly the worst sentiment of the entire finale is that you can only find peace in death. What a fucking waste. What a disgusting travesty of a finale. Oh my god. I understand the nostalgia behind it all. I get the nostalgic feelings of classic Monster of the Week. When I originally saw the finale, I loved it. As I previously stated in this video, I'm pretty much a nostalgia junkie. Trust me, I can see it. I got all the references and little nods to the rest of the series, like John's journal, the random Jenny vampire chick, Dean's love of pie, the quote, "I can't do this alone, yes you can, well I don't want to," when Dean tells Sam that he stood outside his dorm for hours before the pilot, Carry On My Wayward Son, playing as Dean Drives in Heaven, Harvell's Roadhouse, OG Bobby. Wait, hold the phone. When Sam brings up Cass and how he misses them at the pie festival, Dean addresses it by saying,
You know what? That pain's not gonna go away. Right? But if we don't keep living, then all that sacrifice is gonna be for nothing.
I actually don't know what happened, but the writers are not dumb. They knew Dean would be dying in this episode, right? So why have him say that if they don't keep living, then all that sacrifice is going to be for nothing, unless the writers wanted it to mean nothing? I have no words. This ending, man. Okay, sorry. Let's just carry on with the video because I'm legitimately getting mad now and I just want to get through this. To finish my point about Dean's ending, he needed to leave the hunting life in one way or another. If he didn't and stayed in the life just like in the actual finale, then I have no doubt that he would begin to feel unsatisfied with life and eventually quit hunting at some point down the road. What I'm trying to say is that the only logical ending for Dean Winchester, the man whose entire identity is centered around hunting, needed to leave that life for something better. This wouldn't have worked in a regular story where there wasn't the concept of the meta-narrative, because if Dean had just randomly decided to leave the life, even though he was already firmly a part of it, then yes, that would indeed be out of character for him. But since this is a meta-story, Dean needed to achieve a sense of self-actualization that was beyond the story that had been written for him since he was born. Phew, sorry, okay, on to Sam now, because, yeah, on to Sam. So I don't have as much to say about Sam that I did with Dean, but I still think that this was the wrong ending for him. It isn't actually too bad, if I'm being honest, but it is still regressive and quite similar to Dean's ending in many ways, sadly. But there is a core idea at the center of Sam's ending that I do think was a good idea, but it's buried under so much crap and nonsense that was deformed into something misguided, even if the idea itself isn't bad at all. I'll start with that first. Sam being forced to witness his brother's death is nothing new, but now that he is experiencing his supposedly final death, this causes him to leave the life entirely and go live an apple pie life. It's clear from this that he's finally learned to let go of his codependency issue with his brother. He has moved on. The idea of Sam letting go of his codependency with Dean is great, and it's something that I'm going to use in my own ending that I'll detail later in this video. However, the issue is that the decision to let go is forced upon him through Dean's death. It's not a choice Sam makes to move away from Dean and let each other live separate lives, therefore bringing forth their individuality, which is something Dean desperately needed this whole time, as I've stated previously. By omitting Sam's choice to let Dean go and live a separate life, he's robbed of his agency and therefore makes his ending feel unearned and forced upon him. You may say that this would be out of character and strange for the brothers to do. They love each other, and so therefore they have no reason to not be in each other's lives, right? That is correct, but I didn't mean they aren't in each other's lives in some form, just that they are separated and living different lives than each other. I'll go into more detail when I give my pitch for the ending. The next point I want to make about Sam's ending is that he also regresses to what he previously wanted back in the early days of the show. Yes, I do remember that he already lived a normal life back in Season 8. Well, not in Season 8, but, with Amelia and how Wild Dean was in purgatory. You get what I mean. And this could have been evidence to support the idea that he still wanted it in Season 8. Sorry, in Season 15. But no, that was almost half the entire length of the show ago. Sam has moved on from the idea of an apple pie life, living with a wife and kid, owning a home, having backyard barbecues. You get the picture. How interesting would it have been if he actually decided to stay in the life in some way? Maybe not actually hunting, but working from the bunker and helping out other hunters with law or other aspects like that. Maybe Eileen is there too. Maybe they're working together as a couple, not hunting, but being a safe haven for hunters where they can access all the lore they can dream of and find safety there, almost like an upgraded version of Harville's Roadhouse. Just an idea, but that would have been much better than what we actually got. And would have also kind of remained consistent with what Sam had dealt with while Dean was, possessed by Michael at the beginning of Season 14. He had an army, pretty much, and the bunker was the base of operations. And so even though Sam wouldn't necessarily be hunting, he'd still be the leader. He'd still be coming into his own. He'd still be finding his own identity that's not tied directly to hunting. When you look at Season 15 alone, there's quite a lot of things the finale failed to conclude, address, or clear up. For one, Cass's grace was failing. This could have been a really great plot point to play throughout the season because it could cause Cass to contemplate his uses and worth while stressing about the whole situation with Chuck, as well as the empty deal looming over him. But they didn't address it at all. It just kind of faded away and wasn't brought up again. It wasn't a massive thing, but it would have been cool to see how that could have played out. Also, Ruby asked Castiel to save her from the empty in episode 13, the demons rising up against Rowena in the same episode. Dean doesn't ask Jack to bring back Cass from the empty in the penultimate episode. Sam just completely forgets about Eileen in episode 20, the finale. There's no closure for Dean and Castiel. There isn't. There is no closure, no matter what you could say. There isn't. I'm sorry. We also never see any of the side characters again who got Thanos snapped in episode 18. Also, Jack's explosion in the empty made the empty loud. Okay, where's that gonna lead? What does that mean? That seems like a pretty big thing, but it's never addressed again. And yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel about it. It's just that could have been used for a really epic showdown where, say, the empty just boots everyone, all the angels, all the demons, and somehow Jack, instead of doing that whole god power and absorbing Chuck's energy, which was it's cool, it's okay, he could have absorbed all the angels, all the demons on Earth, and that could have been a way we could see a few characters like Crowley. Maybe that could have been where Crowley comes in. It's a brief cameo. But, I don't know. I hope you get what I mean, but it's just... I don't know. It's just that's a big missed opportunity, and that could have all happened in episode 19 and make it kind of like this Avengers Endgame sort of final battle sort of thing, or whatever. It could have felt more epic, is all I'm saying. But yeah, look, that's just that. Those are the main points that the final season and the finale failed to address, and even though they are minor points in the grand pantheon of issues with the finale, they still add up for me and quite frustrating to think about. So, after all that, I think I've made it pretty clear how I feel about the finale. There's a few other points I wanted to make about the narrative of the final season as a whole in conjunction with the finale, but I feel as if I've already said what I need to say. I've seen so many other people give their take on how the finale should have played out, so now I want to give my own version of events that would have given the show a proper send-off it deserved, and the send-off it was seemingly setting up. But keep in mind that this isn't like a full script where everything's fleshed out. This is just more like a rundown of things. There's a few conversations, but it's not a full script, because that would just take too long, too much editing, and just too much time that I just don't have because I've got other things going on in life. But yeah, I hope my finale would, hopefully you find some satisfaction in it. But yeah, I'm mainly just writing how I would have liked to see it go down, and how I think it could have realistically gone down, because a lot of people obviously expecting certain things to happen, and I was too, and some things are more realistic than others, so I've tried to keep that in mind when writing this. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, let's get into it. My finale would start with the same hunt that happened in the actual finale. However, the opening scene is them fighting the vampires. As they're fighting, Sam is wounded and needs to be taken to hospital. After he's treated there, they return to the bunker. Sam wakes up from a nap and talks to Dean. They talk about how that was a pretty close call. Dean mentions that it should probably be their last case. Sam looks confused and doesn't say anything. Dean seems hesitant to discuss the prospect of that being their last case, but he begins anyway. He mentions that he feels as if he's been given a chance at a new life, now that they've defeated Chuck. He states that if he keeps doing the same old, then he's afraid that he'll waste his chance at freedom. Sam understands, but points out that if they don't do this, then who does? Dean ponders this for a second, as he's done so many times over his life. Should he continue to sacrifice his chance at happiness and freedom so other people can live safely? Is that worth it? Originally he would have said yes, but now he's not so sure. Obviously this question has popped up a lot throughout the show, and they've always chosen to stay with the life. Maybe hunting was a part of who they were, but now that they had a chance to try something new, with Chuck not writing their story anymore, they get to write their own, going wherever the story takes them, finally free. After this scene, the pie scene from the actual finale happens pretty much exactly how it happened, except for a few changes of dialogue, and the scene would be extended to incorporate a visit from Bobby and Eileen, and a scene with Dean alone in the Impala. When Sam brings up Cass, instead of Dean saying what he said in the actual finale, he would say something along the lines of this: "Yeah, I miss him too." Sam notices Dean is looking quite sad and asks him what's wrong. Dean struggles to speak for a moment, but then he says, "He sacrificed himself for me. It came out of nowhere. We were trapped and Billy was banging on the door trying to get in, and when he said he made a deal." A tear rolls down Dean's face. Sam notices and moves closer to Dean and looks at him with a classic puppy dog empathetic look from Sam. Dean blinks a few times and wipes the tears away. I'll tell you later," he says, as he begins to tuck into a pie from the box in his lap. Bobby then pulls up with Eileen. Sam and Dean go to greet them. They talk about Sam's wound, Jack defeating Chuck, and how he's a new god. Sam and Eileen, who step out of the truck, and Sam and her kiss. Bobby also asks what they're going to do now that they're free from Chuck. This also leads to the question of whether they're going to stay in the hunting life. Eileen looks inquisitive at the brothers too, as she also wants to know what Sam wants now that Chuck has been defeated and he's free. She is his partner after all. Sam says that he wants to stay in the life, but he's still open to see what happens. However, Dean says that he's not sure. Sam glances over at Dean, who notices but doesn't look back. It's clear to both Bobby and Eileen that this is the conversation that both brothers need to have in private before they could really reveal anything to them. Bobby tells them that everyone is going to have a big get-together in the town of Kansas at a pub the following night. Sam and Dean agree that they'll be there. While Bobby waves goodbye to them and gets in the car, Eileen gives Dean a look, indicating that she wants to talk to Sam alone. Dean obliges with a little smile, and Eileen asks him if he's feeling okay after the wound from the previous hunt. During this conversation, Eileen asks if he and Dean are okay, but Sam says he's not sure. She questions him a bit more and reveals to her that Dean wants to quit the life of hunting for good. She can tell by the look on Sam's face that he's bothered by this, but she can also see a slight hint of understanding too. She smiles at him warmly and places a hand on his cheek. They lock eyes and Sam begins to smile. Dean is back in the driver's seat of the Impala and is watching Sam and Eileen with a sad smile. He looks down at the driver's wheel and the smile fades. He closes his eyes and after a few seconds he whispers, "Jack? Hey man, hope the new job is treating you well." Dean smirks, but it fades quickly and his face resorts back to the grim look of despair. Reference to episode 18. "I know you said you weren't going to be hands-on, and I get that, and thank you. Another Chuck is not what we need now. But, Cass, he didn't deserve what he got. I didn't ask you this before because everything was just so crazy and we had just defeated Chuck, and I know it's only been a few weeks, but please can you bring him back? He didn't deserve to die for..." Dean stops praying. He looks back to Sam and Eileen, who are still talking. Suddenly Jack appears next to Dean, just as a tear rolls down his face. Jack greets Dean in usual fashion. Dean looks surprised and shocked, but glad to see him. Jack tries to explain to Dean that he can't meddle in the Empties' affairs, as they've already poked and prodded it enough. Dean refutes this point by reminding Jack of what Cass would do. What any of them would do if one of them was in the same situation. They continue to discuss Cass and the Empty and how it would work, but by the end Jack just doesn't speak. Both of them sit in silence. After a while, Jack turns to Dean and says, "I'll do what I can, but if it's not possible, then I'm sorry." Dean nods his head, but just before Jack disappears, Jack says, "Dean, I know it might be hard for you to understand right now, but there is just too much to be done in the universe. Things that have to be put right. Chuck messed up, and now me and Amara have to balance things out. I know that it sounds like I'm interfering, but we aren't. We are ensuring that things are allowed to be as they are, instead of them becoming something else. That's why I have to leave this world very soon. I may only have till tomorrow afternoon for me to try and get Cass back. After that, it'll be a while before I can return, and even then I don't know exactly when I'll be back. I also can't stay too long in the Empty either after what happened before. I still have to respect its power and the fact that I don't have any real control over it. I'm sorry, Dean. I wish things could be better, but..." Jack disappears before Dean can say anything else. Just then, Dean notices Sam walking towards the Impala and wipes away the tears. As Sam sits down, he asks Dean if he's okay, and Dean responds, Yeah, all good here." They drive off. The next scene is Dean sitting in his room on his laptop, a few beers by the side of the bed, and as he looks towards... just cut this out. The next scene is Dean sitting in his room on his laptop, a few beers by the side of the bed. He looks toward his table on the other side of the room. A paper lies on top. Dean appears conflicted but decides to go over and pick it up. We see it's a job form. Sam is sitting down at the table in the library. He's also on his laptop and seems very focused on something on the screen. Suddenly he grabs his laptop and stands up. He walks through the bunker to the door of Dean's room. He goes to knock but pauses. He looks back to the laptop where we can see a news posting saying that 3 people have turned up dead with their throats ripped out. Sam and Dean both sigh at the same time. Sam would be sighing and then it will quickly cut to Dean sighing too. Or, I don't know, something like that, but yeah. Anyway, Dean grabs a pen and goes to write on the job form just as Sam knocks on the door. They greet each other, and both are a little startled. Sam asks Dean what he's doing, and Dean briefly looks at the form, but ends up just saying nothing. Sam tells him about the case he's found, and Dean's face tenses, which Sam notices. Or not, if you don't feel like it. No, it's fine, says Dean, who sighs. He stands up, then asks where it is again. Once Sam finishes telling him, Dean looks back at the job form. Sammy, I don't think I'll be going, says Dean. Oh, okay, no worries. I'll just call one of the other hunters, says Sam. I don't think I'll be going on any more hunts, Dean finally says. Sam doesn't respond and is taken aback a little. Neither of them talk for a moment. There'll be a wide shot from inside the room showing them standing still and silent. Dean takes the job form from the table and hands it to Sam, who looks at it. He doesn't take his eyes off it. I applied a few days ago and I've got an interview the day after tomorrow. But it's in Denver, Colorado. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I didn't know how you'd react, said Dean. Dean, I mean, I'm happy for you. I am. It's just, I don't know, it's a big thing, you know. But I thought we were done keeping secrets from each other. I thought we were all over that crap, said Sam. This was different, said Dean plainly. How? Asked Sam. Me, the guy who was destined to hunt till the day he dropped. You know this? That was who I was. Going out in a blaze of glory. Bloody on a hunt, said Dean. But now everything's different. And I now finally realize that isn't who I am. And that can't be what I'm destined for. I can't just be assigned that fate. I can't do that. If I was, then Chuck should have just won, because I'll be damned if I'll let that be my ending. I've got to write my own, and now with Chuck gone, I finally have that chance. I can't waste it, Sammy. And as he says those last words, a few tears have fallen down his face. Sam ponders Dean's words for a few seconds, then asks, "What about me? What am I supposed to do?" Dean doesn't respond. A soft rendition of the piano solo from Americana plays, similar to the one played in episode 18, but softer and less solemn. Dean looks sad, but also confident in his decision. However, Sam looks uncertain. Sam says, in a direct reference to the pilot, and like in the actual finale, Sam says,
I can't do this alone.
Yes, you can.
Well, I don't want to.
Slowly through facial expressions, Sam recognizes those words and remembers that fateful night when Dean came to pick him up from college, when Dad was on hunting trip when he hadn't been home in a few days. His face turns into a sad smile. A tear rolls down his face. Dean now has a tear underneath his eye too as he looks at Sam. Sam slowly hands back the job form to Dean. This will be a close-up on the handover process to emphasize the choice Sam is making through the motion of handing back Dean the job form. He puts his laptop down and the two brothers hug. The two of them stand there, and both of them have tears rolling down their cheeks. The piano solo ends, fade to black. Sam is leaning against the Impala and is texting on his phone. Text appears at the bottom of the screen saying it's the next day. Dean exits the bunker and asks if Sam has got the address for the place where everyone is getting together, and Dean confirms he does, and that it's on the edge of town. He mentions that Bobby had been working on it for a while before the whole Chuck thing, and he said that it was a surprise, whatever that means. As the brothers drive into town, Sam asks what time the interview is, and Dean says that it's at 9 a.m. the next day, so he'll have to leave that night if he's going to get good sleep and be up early the next day. The time at that point would be around 3 p.m. Dean then asks how he and Eileen are, and Sam says they're going good, but mentions that she's a bit shaken from being, Thanos snapped. He wouldn't actually say Thanos snapped, but just something like it, because that would have been too much. The scene where the characters disappear is already too similar to Infinity War, so if they actually referenced Thanos, that would have been too much. But yeah, the two sit in silence for a while until Dean puts on the radio. Back in Black starts playing. The two smile and look at each other before turning back to the road. They continue driving. That would be like a little reference to the scene or the opening of one of the season 3 episodes, I believe. I think it's season 3, episode 4, where they're driving and Back in Black is playing. That's actually one of my favorite episodes, but yeah, that'd be a nice little sort of reference to that. Anyway, they finally reach the pub and get out of the Impala. As they stare at the exterior, a gentle rendition of the first section of Americana plays. That'd be the opening minute. But this time it's slower and almost sounds distant and wistful. The two brothers look at each other before approaching the door. Dean checks the time, only to look concerned. Before they can open the bar door themselves, Charlie opens it and looks gleefully at the two before embracing them both in a group hug. "I've been waiting for you guys," says Charlie. "Hey Charlie, how are things hanging?" Says Dean. "Well, come have a look," she says with a smirk, before leading them inside. The bar is revealed to be one that resembles the old Harvell's Roadhouse. Sam and Dean reunite with a lot of fan favourite characters, however, Dean still looks slightly pensive. Sam takes notice of this and puts a hand on Dean's shoulder. They look at each other just as the lights in the bar begin to dim and a piano solo starts playing. The song being played is the exact same version of Carry On My Wayward Son that was played in season 10, episode 5, titled Fanfiction. This time there isn't any vocals, it's just the piano solo. It continues until the part in the song where it would say, "Don't you cry no more." Then suddenly, the doors open, and Jack slowly walks through. The outside light shines through and is almost blinding to the people inside, especially Sam and Dean, who are covering their eyes with their hands. The music stops, and Jack steps aside to reveal someone. Dean lowers his arm and sees a friend standing before him. Someone who had been there for Dean through thick and thin. Someone who had loved him no matter what Dean had thought of himself. "Cass?" he murmurs, before running to him and embracing him with a tight hug. Jack closes the door and the light adjusts. Suddenly a male voice starts singing from the stage. Everyone but Dean and Cass look. The voice is the lead singer of Kansas, who begins singing the classic version of Carry On My Wayward Son. Dean and Cass lock eyes, and as the words, "Lay your weary head to rest, don't you cry no more," are said, Dean and Cass place their foreheads together and smile while holding each other. Sam looks at them with a smile, just as Dean turns to him. They exchange a almost knowing smile. It's like, here we are, this is the end of the road. The song kicks in at that moment with the instrumentals. Everyone is dancing now, just as Sam, Dean, Cass and Jack all reunite together in one shot. They all sing along to the song with everyone else, then it cuts to different shots of them standing and laughing, as well as interacting with other characters like Jody and Bobby or Eileen. In one of the shots, Sam and Eileen kiss, and Dean looks at them with pride. The next shot is his hand, and someone else's hand interlocks with his. It cuts back to Dean's face smiling, as he turns to Cass, who is also smiling. That way, we can subtly say that, Dean and Cass, they got together without having it be another big scene within this big sort of final celebration with, it's just a bit more subtle. It does the job. It's not as dramatic like Cass's sacrifice, which works for that. But I feel like this subtle moment would have been better. But yeah, back to the finale. When the song finally comes to a close, Sam and Dean are both standing out front. They're leaning against the Impala, and Dean says, "Guess that was one hell of a curtain call." Sam says with a chuckle, "Oh, I wouldn't call it that." "Yeah, well, even if this is the end for now, at least it's our ending. Not Chuck's, not anyone else's," says Dean. "Damn straight," says Sam. Dean smiles and checks his phone. From here, the exact same scene on the bridge at the end of the real finale would play out, but in this version, instead of walking up to the railing and looking out over a valley, Dean would hug Sam, then get in the Impala and begin driving off. The music would also be identical too. It's that nice guitar riff of Americana. As the guitar riff is playing the main theme, like in the original scene, that's when it cuts to a wide shot and pans out. It cuts to a close-up of Dean and it slowly zooms into his face, smiling with a tear in his eye. And then it cuts to a medium shot of Sam standing tall and proud. Bobby, Cass, Jack, Eileen, Jody, Charlie, Donna, Garth all walk up next to him and the music rises. Then it cuts to an extremely wide shot from above, showing the Impala driving away down the road with the sunset in the distance, as well as Sam and the rest of their family standing outside the bar watching Dean drive off. The end. So, that was my ideal finale. It's not perfect by any means, and there's no massive final confrontation, and the emotional arcs could be more fleshed out and explored. Also, the explanation for how Jack convinced the empty to give back Cass would also need to be explained, but I didn't really want to give a massive exposition dump in this already really long video. Also, I do feel like the fact that Jack can only come back the following afternoon is a bit contrived. It's like that, I don't know. See, there's things even about my finale that I recognize that aren't sort of done as well as it could be, but this is just sort of the bare bones of how I would have approached the finale. It's not some massive final battle, which, I mean, kind of already happened in the penultimate episode. It's just the conclusion and resolution of Sam and Dean's story. And as a lot of people have pointed out, the finale, the show started with the brothers, so therefore it has to end with the brothers. That actually that's correct. It does. And those people are right. However, the way they did it in the actual finale is really shit. So, the idea of it ending with just the brothers and just focusing in on their arcs is the right way to go. But obviously, again, I'm repeating myself here, they didn't handle it well, at all. I hope you like my finale, and I hope that it was at least a little bit more satisfying than the actual finale. But to conclude, I genuinely believe that the Supernatural had the opportunity to give its audience a revolutionary kind of conclusion. It had the chance to be one of the most satisfying endings to any TV show ever made. It had the chance to be something more, and yet it utterly failed in everything it attempted, and sadly destroyed 15 years of build-up, progress, and intricate character development for a finale that squandered not only the limitless and amazing potential it had, but it also squandered many fans' passion for the show itself. At least that's kind of how I feel at the moment. If the show had even ended on episode 19, then it would have been an incredibly rushed and convoluted conclusion, but it would have been more satisfying, and I'm sure in time the people who didn't like the penultimate episode would have eventually come around to it. But at the end of the day, if you liked or even loved this finale, then I am happy for you, regardless of my feelings towards it. I know what it feels like to love a piece of media that most people don't like or even hate. That's me with How to Train Your Dragon 3, but that's a topic for another day. What I want to say is that if you love this finale, then all the power to you. While I personally, frankly, hate it, that should not take away from your personal love towards it. Anyway, that's all I've got for the moment. I'll see you in the next video, which will probably be the How to Train Your Dragon ranking video where I rank all 3 films. And following that will be the How to Train Your Dragon 3 video. So that will take a while, and I've got a lot of other stuff going on, so yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to make this video because it's a topic that has been really bugging me for a long time, and I'm glad I've been able to sort of share my thoughts. So anyway, yeah, I'll see you in the next video.